Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
Want awesome health? How about doubling your energy? With our free Awesome Health course, you can get a new video and lesson every single day for 84 straight days. The course covers everything from optimizing your digestion, nutrient intake, correct health issues, including weight, skin, energy, immune system, and so much more. The course could easily be worth $200 or $300 for, and yet it's 100% free when you go to bioptimizer.com. That's bioptimizers.com. Once you're there, just enter your name and email to get the first 3 phases of the Bioptimization report. You'll get the report immediately and begin getting your video lessons each and every day from there on in.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today, we're going to talk about health and wellness, but from the perspective of a busy mom and business owner. There's a lot of ladies out there that are doing all of that on a week-to-week, day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year basis. And there is some unique challenges within it and some unique opportunities. So today's guest, Mary Katherine Stahl, who, yes, she's a busy mom, a wife, and a multi-business owner. She has a love for health and fitness and inspires others to be the best version of themselves. At the young age of 25, she started as a member of a fit body boot camp, and it quickly became the best part of her day every day. She used that passion and energy she felt at boot camp to open her own location in August 2017. In addition to owning 2 locations, in July 2020, Mary Katherine grew it by 4 times. That's 4x of where it started in less than 2 years. The MK, as she likes to go by, attributes a lot of her success to building culture and community within her business. She believes building strong relationships is the key to having a successful business and team. Being a mom is her most important job title, though balancing motherhood and work seems pretty tough these days. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a wonderful intro. Thank you for that.
Well, thanks so much. So, first off, you're very fit, you're running a health business and all that sort of stuff, and everybody will instantly default to that you have some unique capabilities, some genetic variant, some sort of superpower that allows you to be all, do all, end all that sort of stuff. So can you break down for our listeners, in your opinion and your experience, what you think it takes to be a fit and healthy mom running a business? So maybe you can start with how long you've had a family and all that sort of stuff, and maybe the challenges. Let's kind of get into all that first.
Yeah, that's a fully loaded question. And it really all comes down to perspective and how you perceive your situation and mindset. And so for me, I never thought about how building a family and growing a business at the same time were going to intertwine and how those two were going to work together or work against me. And so when my husband and I started this journey almost 6 years ago, sure, we talked about having kids and starting a family one day, but I thought, okay, I have my own business. The joy of having your own business is having flexibility, being able to work when you want. No, that doesn't happen. When you have your own business, you work all the time. Mm-hmm. You work 24/7, and especially in a small business like we have, where it's very much based on community and culture, like you mentioned. When you build relationships with your clients, and then you build relationships with your team, and you form this strong bond, and then you have a child, you're instantly like removed from that because you have to take care of your child, but then you still want to be a part of it. So that is very challenging. But yeah, just over the years, we've grown our businesses and grown our family at the same time. And I look back and I say to myself, okay, would it have been easier if we would have waited until I was in my mid-30s to have kids instead of having children at 27 years old? Should I have waited? Maybe it would have been easier. Sure. But at the same time, it makes me feel like I work harder because I prioritize my time so well. I know like the value of time. And so when I have time to do work, I'm invested. I'm fully invested. When I have time to spend with my children, I'm present in the moment with them. And so, going back to your question, how do you do all of the things? All of the things are not being done at once. There are going to be times where you are really invested in a project with work, or you're really invested on growing your business. And then there might be a season where you're really invested in just being a parent for that, season right now. And so I think it's just finding what's important to you and then figuring out how you're going to divide up your time.
Okay, so I'm going to break this down into some components so for clarity, because I think this is a really pertinent challenge that a lot of couples are facing today. So let's walk back. We're going to walk back pre-children. So how long what age did you get married, and how old were you when you got married?
Yeah, so I took like the more traditional route, the old school route. I got married very young. I got married at 25. My husband and I
that's not that old. Like my mom told me that when she got married, she was 20 and considered old at the time when she got married. So 25, today's world is relatively young.
Yeah.
But historically prior to it would be considered old. So, okay, 25. 25, yes, you got married. How long were you in the relationship beforehand?
So my husband and I dated for 4 years before we got married.
Okay. So you're essentially in a 4-year relationship. You decide to get married. Okay. And then when did you decide to have kids?
I had my daughter when I was 27.
Okay. So within 2 years, you had your daughter.
Yeah.
Did you have any more kids?
Yes. So I have an almost 2-year-old little boy now. He was born in 2021.
Okay. And what's the difference between the daughter and the
2.5 years?
So 2.5 years later. So just by the time you were 30, basically, you had your son.
Yep.
So, okay. So this is a great timeline. So you had 4 years to get into the relationship. You decide you're going to get married. 2 years later, you have your first kid. 2.5 years later, you have your second kid. And then now I'm going to run a parallel line here, because I think this is a great model to kind of work people out, because there's always this projection that it can't be done. So, or one suffers. So when did you start your business?
So we opened in 2017. No, sorry, 2016.
So where was that in relation to being married?
So we opened in August, and then I got pregnant with my daughter that year and had her the next September, the following September.
So you opened about a year after you were married.
Yep.
Okay. Yes. So, and are you in business together with your husband?
We are, yes.
Okay. So you are a successful business couple, I would say. You know, what's interesting is one of my aspirational family versions was two friends of mine. They're in the distribution in Canada. They run a great business, and they also worked in tandem together in a really interesting way, because of course that offsets responsibilities with kids or operational stuff. So there are some advantages if you're in business with your partner, and there's some liabilities. So what were the initial opportunities and challenges when you first you get married, you start a business, you have a kid? That's 3 big life-changing things coming out of the gate. How did you manage that?
So I will back up a little bit and say, in the beginning, this very much started as my thing. So Fit Body Bootcamp at first was my passion. It was going to be my business. And then my husband, he was working as a physical therapist assistant. So what he was doing really tied into Fit Body Bootcamp as well. But it started as my thing. And then when we had my daughter, we quickly realized, okay, this can no longer just be your thing. We're going to have to do this together to make this work. We're going to have to work together as a team. So my husband started getting more involved in back end things like marketing, emailing people behind the scenes, because I was very much the face of the business. And so he was the guy behind the scenes. And then moving forward, as we had business number 2 and baby number 2 thing, he got even more involved, so much that he no longer works in physical therapy and he just does our businesses with me. And going off of your question, there were so many challenges working with your spouse and having a child, because as a business owner, you want to do all of these things. Like, work excites me, but then you have a child to take care of now. And it's like you have this guilt that you carry around 24/7. You're guilty if you're not working, and then you're guilty if you're not spending enough time with your kid. And you can really have like this level of resentment with your significant other if he was having the opportunity to work and I was having to stay at home and watch my daughter, or vice versa. And so that can build in a relationship when you're in a business with your significant other and you have kids and you're both sharing the roles of your business. And I'll share with you how we've combated that over the years. And that is, today, our roles are very much divided. We have the same goal that we're both working towards in our businesses together and in our family, but we're doing different roles. So it's like, there are certain things that only I do. Like, my husband cannot step in and do those things. So look at today, I'm sitting here talking to you. This is important to me. This is a part of my role in my job with Fit Body Bootcamp. So he's picking up the kids. He's entertaining them for the evening. And so we have to just give and take when it comes to like who's doing what and who's going to be responsible for the business portion that day or that hour, and then who's going to be responsible for the children during that time. And so we're always, I don't like to use the word balance because it is very hard to balance, but we do balance those roles together very well.
So that brings up a good point. And I think one of the great challenges and opportunities, this is great, and some people will give me criticism over this, but I think it's something that's worthwhile addressing. So I'm willing to accept the criticism. If we look historically till the 1960s, 50s, 60s, the division of labor in the family was pretty established. Women stayed at home and basically they raised kids, and guys went out in the world and fought wars or did business or plowed the field. And sometimes they had to do all of them. And if they got killed, well, the women and children either got raped and murdered or they were taken over by the new people. And that was pretty much how society worked for thousands of years. And then we had this opportunity where women can now enter into what was maybe traditionally reserved for men, and a lot of them are having great success. And then there's a blowback is where's the division of labor here? Because it was really cut and dry before. And unfortunately, men can't have children. So despite what some people are claiming. So this is interesting that you guys fell into this division of labor so that people knew what was going on, and then you're working around to a common outcome goal. How did you come to those conclusions, and how did you navigate those conclusions? Because obviously sometimes you're talking about emotions and the sense of guilt or the sense of resentment to the other people. And how did you walk through those things with your partner? Because I think that's really an interesting story.
Yeah, that's a great question. And truthfully, I wish I had like a cut and dry answer for you, but I don't. About 6 months ago, so I'm the community manager for the Fit Body Bootcamp franchise, and the majority of my team is on the West Coast. So I have meetings late afternoons, like I have to be flexible with my schedule. And so when I took this role, I had to have a conversation with my husband, like, okay, how is this going to work with our family? What's going to happen when I have meetings from 4 to 7 p.m. and we have the kids at home, and it's crazy between 4 and 8 p.m. at our house because my kids are 4 and 2. I mean, they're just wild and they're tired and overstimulated during that time. And so we had to sit down and say, okay, how are we going to make this work together? And so one of my priorities and one of my values, one of the things that I value as a mom is being the one that takes them to school in the morning and prepares their meals and has the craft for them waiting after school, and just all of these little things, because that's what I had as a child, because my mom stayed at home with me and my dad worked full time, and they took the traditional route when it came to dividing those roles. But for me, I know that this is an untraditional route. However, I am committed to trying to figure out, how can I have the best of both worlds? And my husband knows that that's what I value. Like, he knows that I value spending quality time with my children, but also making a career for myself that then my kids can model and hopefully do something great themselves, similar to what my husband and I are doing. And so when it comes to how do we have that conversation on who's doing what, and how does he accept the fact that he has to watch the kids when I'm doing a podcast with a, someone like you, it just goes back to, what do we value, and what do we value as a family, and what do we value as a couple? And those are tough conversations to have. And I'm not going to say that my husband has been like 100% on board from day one. Like, yes, I'd love to pick up the kids every day so you can work. Like, no man is going to say that, because traditionally, again, the woman usually does it. But we both were working towards the same goal, and we're working together as a team. So it's just you give and you take.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I heard you say in there I think is really good. And there's an overarching objective, and there's some values both in the business and then personally that are serving as the lattice of division of labor and actions moving towards. And then the third piece would seem that there's a level of ownership and responsibility inside of the communication, despite whatever one's feeling.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you think being in business together helped fuel those conversations that you have to deal with the realities of not just the emotions, but the actual outcome oriented and the concordant emotions, I guess I would say?
Oh, definitely. Because it's like, it has to happen inevitably. Like, we have to have these conversations and we have to figure it out. Definitely.
How often do you kind of have to refine that process? In other words, like how often is the feedback loop of like, is it every day? Is it once a week we sit down and kind of like hash out, okay, here's the things that worked, here's the things that isn't, like what's the kind of the rhythm and frequency of those conversations?
It is frequent. It is probably every other day. So usually my husband and I, what we do is every evening, we try to do this. We'll sit down for 5 minutes, like as we're cleaning up from dinner and when the kids are in bed, and we'll say, okay, like, what do we have going on tomorrow? And we'll walk through that together so that we're both on the same page, because I do a lot of podcasts. I have a podcast of my own, and I do a lot of meetings. And so he needs to know when I'm going to be in all of these things. And seriously, I think this is just like a great episode about my husband. My husband is such an amazing man. Like, it used to be where I would feel guilty to ask him to go to the grocery store for me, because I thought that was my role. And over time, as we've worked together as business partners and as parents, it's like, he'll ask me, hey, what's the grocery list for this week? Give me the grocery list. Like, he'll plan out the menu. Like, there's so many things that traditionally women do that my husband takes on that role voluntarily. That's so amazing. But going back to your question, it's that constant feedback. Like, we have to give each other that feedback. Last week, I just happened to be very busy in the evenings, and I knew by Thursday, like, he was done with just doing bath time and bedtime by himself. And so Thursday evening, I'm in a meeting, and I sent him a simple text, and I said, hey, get your guys together tomorrow night. You go out and do something fun. And just little things like that go a long way in our relationship, because he just wants to feel appreciated.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. It's very powerful information. And then one other piece I'm going to ask, because obviously you're running a fitness company, and I've seen a lot of people that start involving a fitness company lose their fitness.
Yeah.
So how do you manage staying fit and healthy as well in that whole equation?
Yeah. So I used to be the person that if I didn't work out every day, I felt like I was going to gain 20 pounds overnight.
Mhm.
And after having kids, I realized like, okay, I cannot work out every single day. So I focus on the things that are in my control. Like I am pretty dialed in on my nutrition. I do very, very well with my nutrition, prioritize protein, a lot of water, sleep. I try to get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. Of course, there are nights where I get less, but I make sleep a priority. And then with exercise, just fitting in fitness, my goal each to do 5 workouts a week. And if I can get more than 5, then that's a bonus. That's great. One
Mhm.
thing that we have always done is like my daughter, she was born at the gym. Like she was at the gym from six weeks old until now. So she'll come to the gym with us on a Saturday or on a Sunday, and she doesn't mind at all. She loves going. And so just surrounding them with that from such a young age, it does make it easier to fit in that workout.
Yeah, that's really great. I have some other friends that have kind of mastered that, and I'm always fascinated about it. And I wanted to bring this to light to our listeners because we have a lot of different listeners that are in relationships or trying to navigate, I would say, modern relationships, and they don't know how to do that. So that was really feedback. Is there any other elements that you would add to that conversation about the management of your marriage in a business with a family that would be valuable for people to know?
Yeah. I mean, people say this all the time, know your spouse's love language and just recognize them. So my husband, like he needs that, like, you're doing a good job. Thank you for doing this. Like he needs that where I don't need that. And so I have to remind myself all the time, like, okay, give him praise, like praise him. Like he really enjoys that. And so I think just finding out like, with your significant other, what makes them want to continue doing these things for you and continuing on this journey with you. And it's challenging. I mean, it's one of those things where you're always working on it. And parents of small children, of littles, I mean, they'll test your patience, they'll test you to your limits each day. But at the end of the day, life is crazy, but we're blessed. Like we're so blessed to have these two perfect little humans and multiple fitness studios and amazing leaders in our organization. And yeah, stuff goes crazy sometimes, but we're blessed.
So thank you for that. I really appreciate this. So talk about Fit Body Boot Camp. What's it about? Who's it for? And how did you get involved? And then who is the type of people that get involved with this organization?
So I started as a client at Fit Body Boot Camp 6 years ago, quickly fell in love with it, not just because of the workout, but because of the community and the culture. The coaches there are amazing. Fit Body is a different workout every single day, and it's only 30 minutes. And it's for all fitness levels. So we meet our clients where they're at. And for me at that time, I had never been into like group fitness. I ran on my own or just worked out like lightweight strength training at a big box gym on my own, but I'd never been in that like group fitness setting. And the fact that I could show up every day and somebody was telling me what to do and they were correcting me if I was doing it wrong was awesome. And I was seeing results like right away because I had never done any HIIT style programming. So most of our workouts are high intensity interval training programs. We do a lot of strength-based training in our studios as well, and the metabolic conditioning. But the way the workouts are structured, you can come 4 or 5 days a week and you're not going to feel like super fatigued and like you can't continue on that long term, which is great because Fit Body, we want people to be members forever. Like we don't want them just to do a challenge and then find something else. We want it to be something that they can sustain in the long term. So it's really for anybody. It's for athletes. It's for women that are just getting back into fitness after having kids. It's for older clientele. We have a program called Fit Body Forever, which is a slower paced workout. It's like the same programming, but just a little bit slower, and you have extra coaching. So we usually it's like our 60 and up crowd, but still, I mean, I had a 78-year-old lady at boot camp at my 6:15 session for 2 years pre-COVID, every morning doing burpees. And she was amazing. Like, she didn't need to be in Fit Body forever. She can do the HIIT workouts with everybody else. So
That's
it's
awesome.
really for anybody. Yeah.
And then how did you move from being a customer to decide that you wanted to have a business doing the same thing?
Yeah, I started looking into the business model. At the time, I was working in a good job in operations. It was a desk job, but it wasn't fulfilling. And so for me at that point in my life, I was still looking for, like, what am I passionate about? Like, I wanted to do something great. I just couldn't really figure out what it was going to be. And fitness has always been a huge part of my life. And so Fit Body, I just saw great opportunity with Fit Body. And so we started looking into franchising, and yeah, it's a pretty simple process. Fit Body has it figured out when it comes to, like, helping people open up their own location and be successful from day one.
That's an important aspect that being, I guess, a franchise, it was like, these are the things that you need to do. Can you execute on it? And
Right.
That makes sense. And then you have 2 places in the Virginia area?
Yes. So we have one location that we've had for 5.5 years. Then we bought a location in the middle of COVID in July of 2020, and we grew that location and sold it just a few months ago to our facility leader of that location. And then we opened up a third location 3 months ago, back in October, with a partner. So a coach of ours, she was one of our first coaches that we ever hired. She worked for us for 3 years, an amazing coach. She's a life changer. And she came to us and said, listen, I want to open up my own Fit Body boot camp. So my husband and I partnered with her, and we're kind of like her silent partner. She does all of the boots on the ground work in her studio, and we help her on the back end, but she's killing it. She already has over 200 members, and she's only been open for 3 months.
That's awesome. It's really awesome to see people kind of rise up through a corporation or a company and then move off into their own, and you supporting that says a lot about you and your husband specifically. What would you say is the key aspect? One of the things I think you talked about was strong relationships to having a successful business and team. So how would you define a strong relationship in those different areas? Are there similarities, and what are the nuances or differences?
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of Masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on Masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at Masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at Masszymes.com.
Yeah, that's a great question, because we're going through some growing pains in one of our locations right now. We have an amazing team. The majority of our coaches that work for us are full-time, and we love full-time coaches because they know all of the members. They're there all the time. They know what's going on. And usually when you have full-time coaches, they're fully invested. And so over the years, we've been blessed with coaches that have stayed with us for several years, which I'm sure you know, like in this industry, retention for fitness trainers is very challenging. It's hard to retain those people. And so from day one, I used to work in the location. I used to coach, and I would build relationships with my coaches and then with the clients. And then over time, as I phased myself out into more of that operational role, I've always instilled the importance of community. And we're not in the fitness business, we're in the relationships business. So you need to know what Mrs. Jones has going on in her personal life, because that's going to spill into when she comes into the studio. And this might be the only 30 minutes that she has for herself today. So make sure you're dedicating that extra time on her and make her feel special. And so that's something that we've always really helped cultivate from day one with all of our coaches. And then they then spill that out into our facilities. But if we didn't have the coaches that we have in our studios, like, we wouldn't be the business that we are today. And that's something that my husband and I, that is one of our passions. Like, that fuels our fire, is helping build people up and grow them into leadership roles where they feel like they're making a difference. And so, like, one of our facility leaders, Mike, he's been with us for over 4 years. He runs our Fit Body Boot Camp like it is his own location. And that speaks volumes to him as a person and as a leader, and to our community, because all of our members see that. And so I think just like building that community and culture with your team first, and then that helps spill out into your members in all of the studios.
It's great. I think some real great lessons interpersonally and business wise in regards to those nuances. Seems like you figured out a lot of things. That doesn't mean that there isn't challenges anytime you're in business, or anytime you're running a family, or anytime in a relationship. I think a lot of people have these kind of, like, I call them Disney-esque projections, which aren't really true. And they lived happily ever after, or they became rich and famous, and their kids grew up and became superstars. And it's like, okay, the Disneyfication of reality is really a bad idea. It's really a very low resolution, and the likelihood of that happening is zero.
Exactly. Well, and what I started with is, right now we're in this growing pain season in our location that we've had for 5.5 years, because we lost a coach who was an amazing coach. And at the end of the day, she just had a different goal and path that she wanted to go on with her career than we had an opportunity for her at Fit Body. And it's been a really, really hard transition for our members. And our members don't know the side of the story that I know, and that all of the other coaches know. They just see their side of the story as, we did something and she decided to leave. And that's all there is to it. And it's been such a challenge, because here I am talking about leadership and how community and culture is so important to me. And all of my members know that is like my number one priority. But yet that person that left, it just was no longer a good fit. But it's hard to communicate that to people. And that's one of the struggles as a business owner.
I think that's a very valid point, that especially in the social media world, where people take the external surface and make a tremendous amount of assumptions, both positively and negative. And inside of a relationship business, where people do develop an affinity for the person that is facilitating their fitness and everything else, that they're projecting their own levels of disappointment or lack of comprehension, and crafting a story that fits with the emotional side of how they might feel about something, to validate their feelings. And often, this is one of the things about human relationships that I think a lot of people have lost in the digital world, is the nuances about projecting their own lack of awareness on particular things, or that nobody is all things to all people, and situations always change. So that person might be the all things to that other person, but that's not who that person that they're having that fitness relationship or business relationship or social relationship. Well, they're a composite of a whole lot of things outside of the relationship with you, but the people tend to look through that only filter, and that becomes a limitation. And maybe that's going to change over time. I hope so, as we get more nuanced in our, after the COVID weirdness that's happened the last 2 years, it seems like a step back. I wanted to ask you about that. Running a fitness business with all the challenges that were going on, picking up another business inside of that and stuff. What have you noticed or learned through that entire process? In how people act, how businesses work, like all that sort of stuff. What have you garnered?
Oh, people just operate out of fear all the time. I wish people would stop doing that. I actually talked about that this morning, that you can't have fear and faith. You just can't have them both. And there's a lot of people that they're just in fear of what's going to happen next in business, or even just thinking about our clients at the studio. COVID for us was, of course, it was challenging for everyone, but a lot of great opportunities came out of COVID for us. And so I'm grateful for that. But during that time, I just think their mind goes to the worst. Like they just think about the worst possible outcome that could happen out of the situation versus being optimistic and having a positive mindset. And that's the number one thing that we saw from our clients during COVID. And that was hard to combat because, you have the news telling you all of these things that are happening, and people are constantly consuming this information. And so any new thing that would come out, like you better bet. I mean, CNN would release that we need to start wearing 2 masks. We would get an email that says, "Are you going to enforce 2 masks in our sessions?" No, we're not going to enforce 2 masks. Delete. I'm just kidding. We wouldn't delete them. You have to respond to everybody, but just maintaining that level of professionalism, but then also trying to maintain being an expert and an authority in your field was challenging during COVID too, because people always want to know, like, what is your stance on this? And what is your business policy on this? And how do you do the right thing? Like this was the wildest thing that we saw. So one of our locations, we had members that were upset because we enforced the masks. And then in another location, we had members that were upset because we didn't enforce them. And so it was like we could not win at either location during the time. So I just hope we never have to deal with that again.
And what have you noticed as the COVID restrictions have, receded somewhat? What have you noticed with people who have either come back to fitness or stayed with it? What have you noticed about the general feeling of those people?
Yeah, to be honest, like it feels to me now like business as usual, like it used to be. But about 6 months ago, we still had people that were like trickling back in that had canceled their membership right when COVID hit. And they took a year and a half off, and you can tell. And there have been many conversations that I've had with people that say, like, I was just so scared. I was scared of COVID, but I stopped taking care of myself. And now they're seeing the importance of that and how they'll probably never let themselves get back to where they were. I hope they don't. But it's sad. It's sad because like I said, you build these relationships with people and you see how they're making their health and their fitness a priority. And then something like COVID happens and they're so scared. And it might not be just because of their own health. It might be because they take care of a family member and they were scared for their family member, which is totally understandable. But to watch somebody completely stop taking care of themselves like they used to for an entire year, that's hard. That's hard to see, because as coaches and as an owner of a fitness business, like all you want to do is see your members thrive. Like you want to see them succeed, and you don't want them to lose that progress that they've made with you.
It's interesting because I know so many times with members inside of the fitness and health industry, we've kind of been able to provide a different model of health and vitality than is what is sort of governed, regulated, and lobbified, shall I say. Right. And what I think has happened in the last 2 years, and this is a commentary, and my perception, not necessarily absolute, it's how I see it, is the fitness industry has demonstrated better outcomes as a community than the dictates of our medical overlords or our political overlords. And a tremendous amount of resistance came out of people who are in the fit community. So there seems to be two aspects that I see as a benefit fitness-wise. Number one, it increases your own immune system functionality and health, because if you look at what is for any disease, including what we were, managing during the pandemic, is comorbidities like obesity, insulin resistance, which are all associated with sedentary lifestyle, not taking care of your diet, were big factors in determining your outcomes, whether that was death or compromisation or stuff like that. Concordantly, when you are fit and healthy, it does seem that you also are more immune to, I would say, fear, and have a higher level of resilience to stress. Even if you do have fear, you can kind of operate within fear. Is that something that you would say is accurate from your observations?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely.
And the third thing about that is, and a message maybe to your community and to all people in the fitness community, is that the fitness community has a better understanding of health and vitality, of what it takes not to get sick in the first place and to provide a resistant body. And I would encourage people that part of the problems that happened was the isolation and the separation of community from what's good. And if you can get inside a fitness community and have that as part of your quote unquote relationships and tribe, where you can have shared values and communications and navigate this and do the things that keep you healthy, the outcomes, both short-term, midterm, and I would say long-term, are supported by scientific evidence that you will have a healthier, happier life, and certainly experience a reduction of the negative stress factors. And getting to that, how do you address diet and supplementation at your business, and how do you, what's the whole process?
Yeah. So with supplementation, I think that is an industry, and but better than anyone, that is evolving over time. And there's more awareness now with supplementation. Like back 6 years ago, when we first started FitBody, we would do these challenge orientations, and we'd have this grand presentation where we talked about the importance of protein. And you would have people literally raising their hand asking, like, what is protein powder and where do I get it? And like, what does it taste like? And I mean, today, when you talk to somebody who doesn't drink a protein drink every day, you're like, really? You don't drink protein? Like, I feel like and maybe it's because of the space that I'm in. It's like everybody drinks protein shakes and has protein in their oatmeal and protein. But back a few years ago, when we first started this, to some people, it was kind of a foreign topic. And so at FitBody, we have a variety of like protein supplements and different like BCAAs, water enhancers that we've tried over the years. For us, we just tell people, like, first, you need to figure out like what you need in your life. Like, what are you missing? Because a lot of supplements out there, like, you can get some of that from adequate nutrition. So let's start there. Let's start there with talking about your nutrition. Take a deep dive into what you're doing right now. What's your nutritional protocol? And so, yeah, we say prioritize protein, but when it comes to any other supplements, we really do it like more one-on-one, case specific to our clients to figure out like what it is that they might be missing in their diet. For me personally, I try to get a lot of my like good nutrition from foods, but I do use powder. I take magnesium in the evening. It helps me wind down. As you can imagine, as a business owner and a mom, my mind is like all over the place. So I need something to calm me down sometimes at night. Magnesium seems to help. I take a probiotic every day, and that's about it. I do some water enhancers here and there. But I'd love to know, like, from your perspective, what are some good supplements that we should be taking right now, especially like me as a woman?
Yeah, great question. And one of the thrusts, we wrote a book called Sick to Superhuman, which kind of identified some of the biohacking processes that people can look to answer those questions. But I'm going to do some general suggestions overall first, and then I'll break down how you get nuanced with your individual. There's 5 distinct tests that I think are worthwhile for people if they really want to answer this question to absolute or the closest level to perfection or refinement they could in that, I would suggest that they need a genetics test off first, because people have predispositions. I'll give you an example. My business partner, Matt Gallant, does really well on a ketogenic diet. And I've been on a plant-based diet for 21 or 22 years. So I haven't eaten any meat in over 20 years, and he's barely eaten any plants in over 20 years. So we're about as far on the spectrum. He's done full carnivore. I've done full raw food. And
so you two don't go out to dinner together?
We go out all the time. Yeah. And the thing is, but here's what we learned over those years is that there are advantages and disadvantages to each diet. And there's predispositions inside your genetics that would lead you to success in one diet or another. In fact, we have a book with Hay House next year coming out that's going to break this down in infinite detail so people will know exactly what to do for themselves. The second test that I think is worthwhile for people to look at is a Dutch test, which is a complete profile of your hormones. And for women, specifically as they move from, say, before they have kids to after they have kids, or as they move into their 30s, there can be major fluctuations within their hormone cycle. And they really need to understand that, especially if they're having kids later, and ensuring that they're in a good shape to have children later. I think a lot of women will work really hard today, and then they kind of run out of time in their mid 30s, and it's a crisis mode, and they often are led to unsophisticated decisions, or they've done significant amount of damage to themselves that having children at that point becomes next to impossible without complications. And that's unfortunate because there's time pressures. And I always say, unfortunately, biologically, women have to grow up faster than men. It's just the way nature set it out. They have to get their stuff in order. So anyways, hormones. And for men, understanding how to optimize their testosterone levels and their free testosterone levels. That's another misunderstood. And I think if you go to TRT, I see so many young guys going to TRT very early in life, when in fact they could probably do some lifestyle interventions, understand that they might have a hormonal situation going on and they need to deal with that. So Dutch test, hormone testing, best done by a functional doctor as opposed to a GP. Some doctors are functional. So that's that. I would also suggest a HOMO IR test, and you can adjunct that with a continuous glucose monitor, which is blood sugar regulation. Insulin resistance is an epidemic in the United States. We have over a 40% obesity rate, over a 70% overweight component. Childhood obesity is out of control. The long-term outcomes of that are horrendous. Mostly this is because of highly processed foods that spike insulin very high and back, and that instability of blood sugar will lead to dysregulation of your brain, dysregulation of your hormones, the adding of adipose tissue, so you get fat, and you get lethargic and tired, and then comes all the associative body image issues and all that sort of stuff. And so there's that, I think, is relative, and I think those are correlated to heart disease. So you can look also at there's a couple more tests that I would add to that model, and then I'm going to get to the supplement side of it. There is hang on a second. Obviously, DEXA scans, regular body fat tests. A DEXA is probably one of the more thorough ones. There's challenges with all of them, but DEXA is a pretty consistent one. And the idea of any body fat test is that you get consistency over time. So even if it's not 100% accurate in its, how much fat tissue to muscle tissue, over time, you're going to see if you're trending in the right direction or trending in the wrong direction. So you want to be directionally aware on the numbers as opposed to absolute, because there's also variances in that. What I do like about DEXA is it also includes bone density inside of that. So you look at lean body mass, you look at body fat, and you look at bone density. And bone density is really going to determine long-term health. And that when women particularly go through menopause, there can be dramatic drops in bone density that interfere with the quality of your life. So I'm always looking at supplementation, not just for the short-term performance gains, which is kind of the athletic model. Hey, can I take some creatine or stimulus to get through the workout? But looking at really supplementation based on your life. Then there's a test, and this is in episode 25 on my podcast, which deals with protein folding in the heart. It's kind of the gold standard. And so basically some basic cardiovascular testing. Cardiovascular disease is actually, there are people that are predisposed to it genetically based on genetic components, which will show up in your original genetic test. So in your original genetic test, you want to look at, do I have blood sugar issues? Do I have, is my protein folding going right for my heart disease? Do I have a predisposition for cancer or whatever? And so then from that, you can start selecting the right sort of dietary interventions and supplementation inside your body. And then, of course, you can do any of the variants GI tests to look at your probiotics. What kind of bacteria you have in your system? Mm-hmm. Do you have overgrowth in your system that, leading to, things like yeast infections or the inability to metabolize gluten or certain foods that don't go well with you because you don't have the right bacteria cultures? And that would help people select digestive health aids. Maybe you don't make enough hydrochloric acid. Maybe you have, and you're deficient in certain enzymes that don't break down certain foods. So other diets would be better for you. So those are the generalized tests that I would recommend. Now, based on that, then you want to supplement first with the big movers. I'll give you a specific example. So in my case, if you look at, now I come from Northern Europe. All my genes are essentially from Northern Europe. So you're thinking, guy's going to do well on probably a high meat sort of diet, a little bit of vegetables, that sort of stuff. Well, that's true, but I also contain, so from a blood sugar level, a high protein diet with moderate to medium carbohydrate consumption would be great. The challenge is if I have that diet, I'll have high in animal fats, and I have a double gene for negative cardiovascular incidence. So animal fats inside of my body are not going to metabolize and probably lead to an increased likelihood of a cardiovascular event. And when you go to a plant-based diet, you reduce the amount of protein and you reduce the amount of essential fatty acids. So the fiber is good because the fiber improves blood sugar regulation, very much like protein. So that if you're a plant-based guy or girl, leaning towards the side of fiber, high fiber is the way you manage blood sugar. If you are a more animal-based model, you want high protein because both of those create satiety, and satiety helps regulate blood sugar, and regulate blood sugar keeps your body fat lows and keep your brain functioning and your hormone cycle stable. So that's two different camps. Now, I have to supplement my diet with specific essential fatty acids. I also have to pick a very unique type of B12. I was supplementing with B12, but couldn't extract it from the B12 that I was taking. I had to get a very specific form of B12. Then also, I tend to lean on the high energy side, and my nervous system can get overstimulated. So high level, my exhaustion of magnesium levels was higher than normal. So if the higher stress levels you go up, the higher amount of electromagnetic pollution that you are subjected to, and the more stimulants you might take, energy drinks, fuels, you could go down the drug aspect of that, whatever. Anything on the stimulating side, you're going to exhaust more magnesium. So magnesium is a good supplement. That's one of the reasons why we came up with Magnesium Breakthrough. So that's how I look at supplementation after 30 plus years in the industry. And so that everybody's right and everybody's wrong. So the question I invite people to ask is it true for you? And how do you know if it's true for you? It can be true in a general sense, but that may not apply to you, your lifestyle, your life. And these are the tools that you determine to determine something good for you.
I love all this. And now I want to take all of these tests. What genetic tests do you recommend? That's one that you can get online, right?
Yes. But now, one of the caveats when getting a genetic test is make sure you don't use a company that shares your data with big pharma, etc.
Oh, okay.
So I use a company called the DNA Company out of Ontario. Kashif runs that company. They're great. And that will reveal so much. And you can actually take a human genomics course with them. They'll assign you a naturopathic doctor to kind of explain the summaries through.
Wow.
It's awesome. I love it. And they're great. I went through I had done my genetics test before, but I've actually done them with several different companies, because how they run the algorithms will determine the recommendations, in other words, how they interpret the data. And I like the way the DNA Company interprets the data. And not saying that there isn't other great companies out there, but I love the way that they do it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm definitely going to look into that. Thank you for sharing all of that, because I think that's so true, especially for our clients at FitBody. It's like they're asking you for that miracle pill or that miracle drug that's going to fix all of their problems. And there is not one pill for everyone or one supplement for everyone. I think it is very case specific, and it depends on like what your body needs and what it's missing.
Yeah. It's like, I do really well with sunshine. My body's capability to absorb sunshine is great. So I absorb, especially I go to a place like a sunny climate like California, I'm getting tons of vitamin D. I also metabolize vitamin C really well. So my body can do a tremendous amount with vitamin C. But the other thing is I don't have the gene that detoxes my gut. And so my focus on digestive health, it turned out, I figured out before I had my genetic test that something wasn't right with my digestion, and eventually built a digestive health company in order to address these things. And then found out later on genetically that was the right answer, but I'd be dead or severely compromised if I didn't figure that out beforehand and go out and do that. But now you can kind of I always say, you can cut off 20 years of trial and error with 20 minutes of testing. So go for it.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to wrap this up, what would you say if you were to predict the future of how people are going to approach fitness, health, vitality, as a business owner, as someone who curates a great conversation and experience with the community of people? What do you think of the elements that people need to hear in order to keep with their goals, stay with their goals, and be literally a healthy person for life? Because you kind of touched on it at first, is like, hey, we would like these customers for life. How do you facilitate that? How does someone facilitate that? And how do you see that happening in the future?
Yeah. I see the future of like the health and fitness space is going to continue to grow more and more each year. And I think that people are looking at fitness and health and nutrition, all of those things together, as like more of a lifestyle approach today. I was just reading an article that was released, and it's talked about alcohol and how in the next 2 decades, they're predicting that alcohol is going to be like tobacco products, where less and less people are consuming alcohol to the limits that we are now. I mean, today, it's still very normal for a group of people to go out and have multiple drinks, just sitting there, just filling their body with those toxins. And I'm not going to say that I don't enjoy a cocktail or a glass of wine every now and then, but I do think that we are definitely approaching like taking care of ourselves in all different areas as like a lifestyle approach. And we're piecing it all together into one. And so I think like going forward, it's so amazing to be in this industry, because here we are talking about the importance of fitness, but fitness is just this catalyst. It's the start of so many other things that we're working on. So when you start taking care of your fitness, people can say it goes both ways. You start eating healthy, then you want to work out, or you start working out, you start wanting to eat healthy. It can go both ways. Well, then once you start doing those two, well, maybe you stop drinking so much alcohol. Maybe you stop smoking cigarettes. Maybe you stop staying up late and going to bed and prioritizing your sleep. And so I think like it's like this ripple effect. And I feel like we're very much living in a world right now where big people are starting to realize the great benefit it has on taking care of yourself, and especially from COVID. Like now more than ever, we realize, okay, if I just spend 30 minutes to an hour on myself every day, that's going to go a long way. It's going to spill out into every other area of my life. So I think going back to your question is just like, it's a lifestyle approach. It's not just a one thing. Like we don't just show up to the gym 5 days a week and think that by doing that, we're going to be the healthiest person possible. It's just every different area. How can we advance in all those areas with our nutrition, our mindset, our fitness, everything?
Beautiful. I do believe that we are in the bifurcation of society. That if you are moving in the direction of your goals, your dreams, and your ambitions, it's never been a better time. But if you are outsourcing those things to an external authority, your likelihood of getting them are pretty sad. So take up the stride, folks. Find yourself in community. Environment is stronger than will. Great environments have great leaders, and great leaders create great feedback systems for you to continue to optimize the environment. So, Mary, I want to thank you for joining us, for being us on the podcast today. Where can people find out more about you, your company, what you're doing, and to wish you continued success on your journey to help people become a little bit healthier each and every day?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Mary Katherine Stahl. And then if you're interested in Fit Body Bootcamp, you just go to fitbodybootcamp.com, type in your zip code, and we have over 275 locations nationwide. But yeah, and then also I have my own podcast, Beyond the Scale. We have a new episode released every Wednesday. We just launched in January, so we're fairly new, but we talk about everything: health, fitness, mindset, nutrition, all of the ththings.
Absolutely love it, and wish you the best of success for you and your husband and your young growing family and your, I guess, medium-age adolescent businesses. I don't know how you would call that. But
right.
Congratulations, and thank you for being an advocate for these lifestyles. People like you and your husband are the bedrock of the fitness industry, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the podcast today.
Well, thank you so much.
And that's it, folks. That's another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. It's Wade T. Lightheart. Be sure to check out all the links in the show notes to find out more about this. And more importantly, take your fitness to the next level. Take your health to the next level. Take a test. Join a community. Go kick some butt. I'm Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Thank you for listening to the Awesome Health Show. Take care.
At Bioptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is, unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.